Today, we're going to talk about a story it's heartbreaking, and frankly, it's deeply unsettling. It all happened on a crowded local train in Thane, and it forces us to ask some really tough questions about language, about tolerance, and about the kind of mental trauma you can't see. So let's get right into it and break down what happened.
Everything started with these three simple words. In English, it means, please move a little. That's it, a polite request from a 19-year-old student just trying to get by in a packed train. But, this simple phrase would end up triggering a chain reaction with truly devastating consequences. And that's the shocking reality we have to face here. A few words, a single moment of conflict, and a young man's life, a life full of potential, was just gone. How in the world does something like this happen? To even begin to understand, we have to look at exactly how things unfolded, step by step.
Okay, so let's reconstruct what happened to this 19-year-old. He was a first-year science student just going about his day. The details of this train ride are absolutely crucial to understanding the sheer weight of this tragedy.
So look at how quickly this escalated. It's just staggering. It begins with a simple, polite request in Hindi, but he's not met with a simple action. He's met with a challenge. Why don't you speak Marathi? And right there, that question changes everything. It turns a normal, everyday interaction into a conflict about identity. From that one question, it just spirals out of control, from words to actual physical violence. The young man was so shaken by this, he became physically ill, right there, just completely distressed. He eventually gets home, he tells his father what happened, and then, completely overwhelmed by the shock and the trauma, he takes his own life.
And this brings us to such a critical part of the story. The physical assault, you see, that ended on the train. But the real damage? It was invisible. We're talking about a profound psychological impact, one that ultimately proved to be fatal.
The incident left him in a state of severe mental shock. I mean, can you imagine the fear, the anxiety he must have been feeling? This wasn't just some small argument. It was a public humiliation, a public assault that led to this intense emotional distress. His father in his official complaint said it perfectly. My son was harassed over language, and it was this harassment that directly caused the acute stress that led to a suicide. So the point here, the really crucial point, is that the cause of death wasn't just the physical altercation. It was the deep, unseen psychological wound.
So what's happening now? Well, officially, the police have filed what's called an accidental death report, and they're working to identify the passengers who were involved in the assault. The investigation is still ongoing. A tragedy like this doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It really points to a much bigger and, honestly, a much more troubling issue in our society, the problem of linguistic intolerance. This is where we need to zoom out a bit, from this one awful event to the wider social context.
At the very heart of a diverse society like India is this idea of linguistic tolerance. It's a really simple concept, but it's so powerful. It's about respecting other people's languages and seeing them for what they truly are, a way to communicate, to connect with each other, not something to divide us. And this, right here, illustrates the central conflict perfectly. On one hand, language is supposed to be a bridge, right? Something built to connect us, to help us understand each other. But on the other hand, it can be sharpened into a weapon. It can be used to exclude people, to assert dominance, to build these invisible walls between us. And in the Thane train incident, that's exactly what happened. A simple tool for communication was tragically turned into a weapon. Now, it's really important to understand that this isn't just a matter of social etiquette or being a good person. Actions like these have serious, real-world, legal consequences. So let's take a quick look at the legal framework that actually applies here. Under the Indian Penal Code, the people responsible could face a whole range of charges. We're talking about things like IPC 323, which is for voluntarily causing physical hurt. Then there's IPC 504, that's for intentionally insulting someone just to provoke a fight, and IPC 506 for criminal intimidation. But here's the kicker. Harassment based on language can be classified as hate behavior. The law is really clear on this stuff. Assaulting or intimidating someone over the language they speak is not a small thing. It has severe legal consequences.
So, after all of this, what do we take away from such a heartbreaking incident? See, this isn't just a story about a few angry people on a train. It's really a reflection on all of us, on our collective responsibility as a society.
So, what do we do? Where do we go from here? Well, there's a path forward. First, we have to promote social sensitivity, just basic mutual respect in our public spaces. Second, We have to start prioritizing mental health, making sure there's support for victims of trauma and bullying. Third, we have to uphold the law and make sure everyone understands that this kind of discrimination is a punishable offense. And finally, and this is a big one, we need to encourage active bystandership, creating a culture where people feel like they can and should step in responsibly when they see something wrong.
At the end of the day, it all comes down to this. The safety and the well-being of every single person in our shared public spaces, well, that's on all of us. It's our collective responsibility to build an environment where tolerance and respect are just the default, not the exception.
And that leaves us with one last, really powerful question to think about. In that crowded train car, as things went from a simple request to a violent assault, should the other passengers have stepped in? What is our role, what is our responsibility when we witness intolerance happening right in front of our eyes? It's a question we all really need to answer for ourselves.